So, you fancy a Richard Mille, or more classic Cartier Santos skeleton, or more recent Hublot square bank Unico chronograph, but the crazy price tags are holding you back. Well, I have something here quite unique, similar in style, but about 100 times cheaper, or more like 1000 times cheaper in case of Richard Mille. And it is still a very well crafted timepiece with some very impressive specs, a fusion of titanium and sapphire, and even with a claim of in-house movement. Sounds too good? Well, we have this watch here, so let's find out. Hello and welcome to the channel. Yes, we search high and low to find cool timepieces with impressive specs that don't break the bank. So if you want to see more of those, well, don't forget to subscribe. This is my second Boderry on the channel. The first one, called Voyager, I bought on the recent AliExpress sale, and it was really impressive. Top specs, top quality and bottom price. I will leave a link to that review in the description of this video. So when Boderry reached out and offered to send this model for review, I readily agreed. I also get to keep it, and that is why there is a disclaimer pop up at the start of this video. In return, of course, as usual, I promise to deliver a comprehensive review of this watch, and of course there will be a link to Boderry store and to this product listing in the description. And yes, we will take a very close look at this timepiece indeed, straight into its heart and soul, so to speak. Why? Well, because we can. It is a skeleton after all. However, I'm not going to take it just on the face value either. Rest assured, I will even put it on a time grapher to see how this 72-hour power reserve Boderry movement performs. Now, Boderry ships this quite special watch in an appropriately premium box. Not over the top, but definitely suitable for a premium look of this timepiece. Inside we will find warranty card, the user manual, Boderry branded cloth and of course the watch. Okay, dimensions. Yes, it is quite an important characteristic, especially for this type of quite an unusual case. So where do I start? Alright, first the bezel. We have a square bezel here, 38.5mm width by 38.5mm length. Measuring the actual case without the crown guards, we have 41.7mm width. The case height is 12.5mm. We also have 24mm lugs here, but I think this measurement is purely for academic benefit, because we are unlikely to use any other straps other than Boderry ones. The straps are actually of a high quality and are quite affordable at the same time, and we will take a look at the options later in this video. Well, most measurements sound manageable so far. However, if we are to measure the lug-to-lug distance, this is where this watch shows its actual true colors, so to speak. We have 55.5mm distance. Okay, the lugs do curve down quite nicely. Actually, the whole case curves, which I think is pretty cool. However, this is still a big watch. I will of course do some wrist shots on my about 7-inch wrist, and we will even try it on a 6.25-inch wrist later in this video to see how this watch actually wears. Now, the supplied rubber strap has a slight taper to it, to about 20mm, and this strap should comfortably cover wrists from about 6 inches, which is 15.5cm, to about 8.25 inches, which is about 21 centimeters, and this really imposing looking watch weighs only 180 grams, a benefit of having a case built out of titanium. Okay, the case and the crystal. As I mentioned earlier, the case is a fusion of sapphire crystal and titanium. We have a combination of various finishes, where most of the case has a well-applied, consistent satin brushing finish and a subtle mirror-polished chamfer that runs on both sides of the case, on top and on the bottom. And the indents on the lugs have what looks to me like a bead blasted finish. I like the lug indents, they complement the rest of the quite intricately sculpted case. The quality of the finishing is very good, it is consistent, there are no sharp corners and the facets are crisp and well defined. Taking into account that titanium is generally more harder to machine compared to stainless steel, and probably the curved shape of this case doesn't actually make this task any easier, we have a well-finished titanium case, which is definitely punching way above its price point. We have a nut-shaped crown, which is protected by crown guards. The crown is signed with Boderry logo, the crown is well proportioned and is smooth in operation. Looking at the back of the case, we have a see-through back case cover with key highlights of this watch specification. The back cover is secured by 8 screws. I like Boderry's attention to detail here. The font on the writing is consistent with Boderry branding. And also, when they say all sapphire, they really mean it. The curved back case see-through cover is made out of sapphire, so we have a curved sapphire crystal at the back, a large curved sapphire crystal at the front covering the dial, and even this side window, through which we can see some of the movement, if we look really closely, is also made out of sapphire. So, in terms of materials, no compromises here from Boderry. A fusion of titanium and sapphire. I think it is pretty cool, especially taking into account the price point of this timepiece. And Boderry declared 100 meters of water resistance on this watch. Now, this level of water resistance is of course entirely plausible, however, with a push-pull only crown, I would exercise caution. So it is probably fine for any type of moisture exposure, even for an occasional swim. However, if I was to spend an hour or more in the water, I would probably take this watch off. Dial. Okay, because this movement is so elaborately skeletonized, there is not much dial here to speak of. Well, almost. We have printed minute chaptering and protruding hour markers, which are filled with lume. The hour markers in the corners of the dial have corresponding screws in the bezel, which I guess could help the legibility somewhat. We have Boderry branding on the top of the dial where we would normally see the 12 o'clock marker, and we have skeletonized hands, and hands tips are filled with them as well. So in terms of interesting design, the dial looks pretty cool, but in terms of legibility, well, not so much. But then again, who cares, right? It is all about the looks on this watch. Well, let's examine the lume. According to Boderry, they used Swiss Superluminova BGW9 here, which is good, however, I think they could have applied it a bit more generously. The lume is there, but it is definitely not the brightest, and it fades pretty quickly, especially on hour markers. Movement. It is one of the highlights of this watch. We have Boderry's proprietary movement here, what they call BDA10T-01. I think the finishing and skeletonization is done really well. And after staring at this movement for a number of hours through a macro lens, I must say that the quality of assembly is really good too. I like the design, the winding rotor is well finished and branded, and we have a nice contrast between the high polished parts of the movement and almost black dark matte rotor, and supporting skeletonized outer plates on both sides of this watch, front and back. We even have some degree of symmetry between the main spring barrel and the balance wheel, both located on the main center axis of the dial. And this movement not only looks good, but it has a few tricks up its sleeve too. First, it is a high beat movement. This Boderry movement has frequency of 28,800 vibrations per hour, which is more common to a high-end Swiss and Japanese timepieces. And second, this movement has 72 hours of power reserve, which is again more in line with more upmarket calibers from brands like Tudor, Seiko and Rolex. However, unlike those movements, this Boderry one doesn't hack. That is, the second hand will continue running even when we pull the crown out to set the time. Not a big deal for this watch, but generally a useful feature of most modern movements. I of course was very curious how this Boderry movement will perform on the time grapher, and I've got very decent readings, as you can see. Very good bit error and accuracy. I've got so excited that I even tried different position, which still gave me quite good readings. One thing I did notice, it is good to have this watch winded up at least halfway to get a good consistent readings on the time grapher. Another point about this movement, it hasn't been around for too long. And like with all the not very well-known movements, there is a very little data out there in terms of its reliability. So it is good that Boderry offers this watch with 2 years warranty, showing that they have some decent level of confidence in this movement. Bracelet. Okay, bracelet is done using a high-quality FKM rubber. Just in case you never heard of it, it is a high-quality rubber that is used in the high-demanding industries, among of which are food and pharmaceutical industries, because of this rubber low degradation property, including when in contact with other fluids, like sweat for example. And also this rubber is used in aviation and aerospace industries due to a very good tolerances to a wide variety of temperatures. So the rubber strap has a good feel to it, it is also quite pliable and should conform to the wrist very well. The clasp is also specifically designed for this watch. It is a butterfly-style clasp, but because it uses a spring-loaded mechanism, it is much less fiddly to operate. The clasp, unlike the case, is made from stainless steel. The branding and the finishing on the clasp is done very well, and it works well with the rest of this watch. In terms of tolerances and build quality, the clasp feel very solid and well put together. It is quite a unique mechanism. Well, it is the first time I come across one of these, so of course there is a question of how long will it last. Well, I have a couple of points on this. First, we are still covered by a 2-year warranty here. And second, these straps and clasps are not very expensive and are available from Boderry website or from their AliExpress shop for around $35 to $40 depending on the type of discounts you get at the time. And personally, I would most likely buy another strap, and not because this one might break, but because fitting a different color strap on this watch, a white for example, will completely change the look of this timepiece. So, here how this watch wears on my about 7-inch wrist. A curved case shape certainly makes it much more comfortable to wear, so the curvature is not just a gimmick. And here, purely for the sake of science, how this watch looks on a 6¼ wrist. Okay, the verdict. Right, like any timepiece, of course, this watch also has some shortcomings. I think Boderry could apply a bit more lume for better legibility at night and possibly address the legibility during the day by making the hands and hour markers on the dial a bit more prominent, possibly by using different color or maybe by using different finishings. And while we are on the subject of legibility, maybe some additional anti-reflective coating on that lovely curved sapphire crystal. Other than that, this Sapphire sandwich watch presents a ton of value for its about $270 price tag, which is a price after the introductory 10% discount. Top quality materials, FKM rubber, titanium, sapphire of course, plus Boderry's own movement, as well as very solid build quality. So if you've been looking at Hublot Square or Richard Mille and want to feel how those watches will wear, I would strongly recommend this Boderry before committing tens or possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars. What are your thoughts? Well, don't forget to let us know in the comments. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. But if Richard Mille or Hublot watches are not down your alley, so to speak, then check my other videos. I will put this selection somewhere on the screen, somewhere around here. So give it a click. And as always, thank you for watching, take care, and I will see you in the next video.